How was your childhood? Where were you born?
Well, my childhood is slightly different from the general impressions people have about the untouchables. My father came from a well-off family because his father, he had business in 3 cities, Simla, Ambala and Lucknow. And after his death there were differences, some differences between the brothers, and my father came to Jatog near Simla, where we had a house, and he settled down there and he started life afresh at 3 rupees per mensum, watching the wireless stars. That's how he made a start. But he was educated, and he couldn't go to school, but his father engaged a tutor, and 2 brothers took interest in studies and 2 brothers did not take interest in studies. They were more interested in drinking. My father and his younger brother, they were interested in studying. They studied Urdu and Hindi. So when my father came to Simla, he tried to find a job, but he couldn't get a job. So he found a chowkidar's job, and then he started working in a post office as a sweeper. Later on he joined the wireless office also, in the same capacity. But he had a house of his own, saved money, and he used to spend time reading, and his hobby was Ayurveda. And we had a custom in the family that somebody had to be adopted as a guru, and the man he adopted as a guru was a medical practitioner, Ayurvedic and Unani. So that interest got stimulated. But he took special care to educate me and my sister. We used to go to school, but he engaged a Maulvi as a tutor who used to teach for an hour in the evening. So you can imagine I was a very different person in this sense, because not many people belonging to the untouchable community will have parents like him. So he saved money, he bought a house, and then today we own 4 houses in that place. So he was financially well off, and spent most of his time with the books and Ayurvedic practice and this kind of thing, beside the job. And he put me in a school, and I studied in a primary school in my own native place, and then for 2 years I was in Balganj, near Simla, and that was a lower middle school. And one experience I remember about my childhood is that my father took me for admission to that school, and the headmaster was very pleased, and he said, well, I've checked him, he's a good boy and he will make progress. And my father, like most people, happened to say, agar Bhagwan ki marzi hogi, to zarur aap logon ki usse padhega. The moment he uttered the word Bhagwan, that headmaster got wild. What is Bhagwan? What does he do? What has he done for you people? So that was a new approach altogether about Bhagwan that I got from my headmaster. But then I became serious, because at home the atmosphere was fairly religious, and we had closer contact with the Christian missionaries of foreign origin, British and Australian and American. And for me it was something very different and something very new. The moment he came to know that I belonged to an untouchable community, he said, why didn't you tell me early? I have touched you. I'll have to go and take bath, and taking bath in Simla was very expensive. So then I came and told my father that this was how the drill master behaved. So my father came again to the headmaster, and headmaster said, all right, you don't go to the drill, you sit in the library and read books. So I sat in the library and read books. And I don't know whether he admonished as headmaster or the drill master or not, I don't know. But I didn't go to the drill classes. So these are some of the memories I have about.
Did the headmaster belong to the upper caste?
No, he belonged to the upper caste. But I know, I think in those days, in Punjab, there were 3 movements which were affecting the intellectuals. One was the Arya Samajist movement, Dev Samaji movement, and there was some inclined towards Marxism, atheism and that kind of thing. And a small group was becoming interested in Gandhism. So I'm talking about late 20s and early 30s. So I think he was influenced by some atheistic organization, and he didn't have, and he didn't have much faith in that Hinduism and so on. So that's why he said that. So after that, 6th class, I had to go to some high school. So I was, the teachers from the ST school and the DAV school used to come to these lower middle schools. So there were 2 boys from our class, myself and Jatindranath. Jatindranath was a very intelligent boy. Either he stood first or I stood first. But this time he was first and I was second in the class. So his father was inclined towards Arya Samaj, so he went to the DAV school, and they had masters from the ST school. He took me to his school. I didn't know much about ST, Sanatana Dharma and others, but I think I didn't come across any untouchability in this Sanatana Dharma school. But then there came a Brahmin teacher, religious saint or something, and he delivered a lecture, and he said every boy must put on tilak in the morning when he finishes prayer. And second thing, you must recite Gayatri mantra. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tatsavita Varenyam Bhargo Devasya. I mean, that kind of thing. And in the class they had to repeat 108 times. But when we tried to enter the class, then the peon who sat there with a bowl full of that paste, we were 5 boys, 2 Christians, 2 Mohammedans and myself, and there was one more scheduled caste boy. So he would do immediately, because he thought that in case we dip our finger, it will get polluted. So that was the only experience after that visit of that Brahmin religious leader. Otherwise, I didn't come across any untouchability there. So, but in my native place, the untouchability was practiced by the Hindus in turning on the taps, and the Babas didn't cut our hair, and we couldn't enter a temple, and we had to ask for some Hindu boys to get water in case we wanted to drink water, and that kind of thing. But since my family was financially well off, we didn't experience any difficulties as other things are concerned. So that was my childhood. I wasn't.
What your education afterwards?
Well,
Higher education.
Education, it was a tragedy, because my father was barely 44 or 5 years old when he died in 1943. I was 16. And a month after that, my house was burned down. It caught fire from the neighboring house. It was owned by a Mirzai. And in his absence, the fire broke out in that house, and it spread to us. Spread to our house, and everything was destroyed. So these 2 tragedies taking place within a short period of 1 month. And because of my age, I couldn't find government employment early. So I'd been doing some tuition work and earned some money and gave to my father. But a month before his death, I found employment as an accounts clerk in CPWD in Simla. An accounts clerk used to draw 40 rupees plus 11 dearness allowance, 51. And my boss was an officer from Burma. He had come as a refugee from Burma, but he found employment. He was an engineer. And I came to know later that he also, Rangaswamy Lingasam was his name, he also belonged to the scheduled caste, but he was educated in Burma. So I worked there for a few months, and then Dr. Ambedkar was elevated to the position of labor member during the wartime. So he visited Simla. My father used to talk about Ambedkar in his childhood, because we used to read, he was very fond of reading newspapers, and the word in Urdu was written not Ambedkar, but Ambedkar. But he used to say, no, he's not Ambedkar, he's Ummeedkar, harbinger of hope. So whenever there was any news published in these papers, he used to talk very proudly about this. So, but we didn't come across any biography or any other thing, accepting what was written against him in the Congress papers and in some Hindu papers. The only thing favorable I had read was in the Kranti of Jatpat Turak Bandul, published from Lahore. That was editor was Santram. It was only in that magazine that I found some articles in praise of Ambedkar. Otherwise, most of the papers were critical of his approach. They said he's pro-British, he's anti-India, he's anti-Gandhi, and all that kind of thing. So this is, I met him for the first time, and I waited outside his place for 7 hours because I was just a boy. And all the people holding important positions, they came, visited him, talked to him, and went away. But his personal assistant said, "You keep sitting, I'll introduce you." Said about 7 o'clock, when he was going to Mushtaq Ahmad Gurmani's house, I was taken in. He looked at my face and he said, "Yes." I was about 16 then. He says, I did not go in there to ask for anything specific, but said, "What do you want?" Well, I didn't want anything. I was already employed and my father had died. So I told him that this is a situation in my family where I would like to serve under you. Have you put in an application? I said, I sent one, but nobody bothered about it. It doesn't matter. Within 15 days, I got a letter of appointment and I joined his department, Ministry of Labor. And I found that most of the Mohammedans were terribly against me and terribly against the scheduled caste people, not so much the Hindus. Because the Hindus there were rather progressive and well-educated people, and some of them might be Aristmatics, I do not know, but they were South Indians, South Indian Brahmins, and I found them more progressive. Because this Matlub Hussain was my immediate boss. He had some complaint against me because I was overburdened with work, and I used to start my day at about 9:30 in the morning and keep sitting till 7 o'clock, working throughout. But even then, everybody tried to exploit me and dumped his work. So something was delayed. And Sir Alamullah Rizvi was there in charge. He was an IAS officer. And Brigadier Ree, he was the Director of Technical Training. So he took me to Brigadier Ree. And Brigadier Ree looked at my face and he said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 16, sir." He said, "Look, you take more interest in your work." And that's all. So this Matlub Hussain, when he came, he said, "Oh, we fired him and that." He said this and that. He didn't say anything at all. And I resigned. I didn't resign. I left that job and joined the Air Force. And in fact, when I went to the recruiting officer, I said I'll go to Navy because I had read a lot of literature in my labor department published by the Director of Publicity about Air Force, about Navy, about Army and so on. I didn't want to go to Army because many of our relations had served in the Army. For 2 generations they had been associated with it. But Navy appealed to me because I could go to the seashores and travel and so on. But when I went to Jalandhar for final confirmation, the recruiting officer was an officer from Air Force. And he said, "Why are you joining Navy? Why don't you join Air Force?" Well, he gave me a test, I passed, and then I was sent to Bangalore for initial training. I did my training there. Then I did my technical training, which was a very special training, because radar was the highly secret department of the Air Force and Navy, and I was selected for that. And I underwent training there, and then for advanced training to Belgaum, and from then I was posted to Calcutta. And from there we went to Burma Front. But I was working with the Australians, British, Americans, and there were 1 or 2 Indians in our unit. So it was very different atmosphere. And I learned many things in the company of these people because they had a very different approach. And Air Force was very different from the soldiers of the army. They were well educated, and I know that my immediate neighbor, he was a graduate from Oxford University, and he was British. And similarly, some other persons were also well educated, and their language and approach was a little different. So it was, for me, an educational experience also. Then I was recommended for commission too, and technical training. So I joined the technical training. I came back to Bangalore, and I was selected for commission, and I was to go to UK for training. But unfortunately, they wanted me to deposit 5,000 rupees, and I couldn't do that.
That time?
46.
45,000 was a big amount.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't pay. I couldn't go to England. I was utterly disappointed, but then I thought I'll leave Air Force, go back home, and look after the family, because mother was there and 4 or 5 members were there. So war was over, and I had the option to either continue or to seek release. So I signed for back to Shimla. So there, I had been working with Scheduled Caste Federation, and I came across very progressive thinking person belonging to the Communist Party. And one prominent person that I remember very well is Professor Kameshwar Pandit. And there we read the Marxist literature, and the Chinese experience, especially. I came across the books written by Mao Zedong, but who appealed to me most was Liu Shaoqi. I mean, beside the Marx and Engels, the other person who appealed to me very much was Liu Shaoqi. Of course, he died early. Mao remained in force, in power for a long time. So within that communist group, we used to hold classes. And we used to read the latest literature published by the Communist Party of India and Communist Party of Britain, because British also had a Communist Party, and the British leader I knew very well. His approach was slightly different from the other Marxists. So there, while I was associated with the Ambedkarian organization, Scheduled Caste Federation, being a government employee, I couldn't take part in that, but I was associating with the most prominent and upright character leading that movement in Shimla, Bhagwan. So I used to do his writing work, correspondence, reading articles, and providing him with literature. He was not very highly educated, but very enlightened person. So this movement was fairly strong. So, but this Communist Party movement also appealed to me very much, and I was, I think, too young to make any distinction as to which was more correct. But then Ambedkar movement appealed to me more, because the Marxist movement, they believed in Marxian economic interpretation of history and didn't touch caste and untouchability. But in Ambedkar movement, we had economic approach as well as the social problem, the untouchability and caste system. And that appealed to me, and I continued. But then for some reason, I had to come to Delhi. In fact, the office shifted to Delhi. So the house again got divided, and I established contact with the communist movement and communist bookshop and workers here. Dwarkanath Bhaghi was one. Y.D. Sharma, Yagdat Sharma had just come up. And then we used to hold study circle meeting at my residence. I mean, I was associated with Ambedkar movement, all right, but this was also there.
Where was your residence at the time? Where were you staying that time?
I was staying in Sevanagar. It was a peon's house that we had hired. I couldn't afford to hire in any other place. I paid about 40 or 50 rupees per month. And it was in that room I stayed for about 2 years. Then I shifted to Lodi Colony with a friend who was an ex-communist. He was thrown out of the party, V.S. Bhatnagar. He had been a whole-timer, but he was thrown out of the party. I don't know why. So, but he was very fond of reading. not Marxist literature anymore, but general reading. So I stayed with him. And then I tried to hire a house, and ultimately I was allotted a government quarter in Sarojini Nagar. Yeah, number was GI 999. That was a memorable number. So I stayed there, and here I came in touch with the Backward Classes Commission. And Shivdayal Singh Chaurasia from Lucknow, he was one of the members there. Kalankar was there, and so many. So there, I used to spend most of my time in the morning and in the evening in Gandhi Peace Library, which was situated on Mansingh Road in those days. It shifted to a new place much later. And Chaurasia used to pass through that veranda, and he wondered, what am I reading? And then one day he called me inside, and he said, what are you? And I told him. And then he put a question about caste. He said, very strange, you're so fond of reading. I said, well. And then after a few days he said, I have a request to make. And I was wondering, that man, he was a member of the commission, ministerial rank. He says, I'm making a request. I was surprised, but then I said, what is it I can do for you? He said, can you keep my son with you? I'll pay the expenses. I was just wondering, why is he thinking like that? Anyway, I said, well, but my accommodation and other problems are there, but I'm prepared to keep him. He said, doesn't matter. So he kept his son with me. He was admitted in a school here, and I used to help him in the evening. He did well in the school. Beside my brother and sister who were attending school, he also was one of the members of the family. And then Chaurasia somehow thought that I should marry. I was not interested in marriage. I wanted to be a bhikkhu and work among the scheduled caste people, according to the teaching of Dr. Ambedkar. And Chaurasia wrote a note of dissent of Backward Classes Commission. In fact, I did most of the writing because he was not good at writing. He was a lawyer, all right. And he took me to Dr. Ambedkar. He wanted to show that note of dissent to Dr. Ambedkar. And Dr. Ambedkar didn't have very high opinion about that kind of note. We said, you leave it here, I'll go through that. And then he put a question about me. He had forgotten that we had met earlier. And then he said, we so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. So I spoke most of the time in English. And I offered to work for him. And I said I can devote 3 days a week. So 3 days a week, he said he agreed. And I used to go there and work for 3 days in a week, whatever work he gave me. Sometime he wanted to get some information about certain books. So I used to go to the library and get extracts from the books and give it to them. He himself had a very good library, and I could just search for those things there. But then after this work was over, I used to sit for about 10 minutes and talk to Ambedkar. I used to put my own questions. And one question which shocked me was when he said, we'll embrace Buddhism. He made a public statement and wrote a number of articles also. And I said, Baba Saheb, I want to put a question about Buddhism. He said, yes, what is it? And I said, I come from Himachal Pradesh. We have Buddhist community there. And we know I, as a member of the untouchable community, cannot enter a Buddhist vihara. How do you say that Buddhism is better than any other religion? And I said, I've been in Burma. I've been to areas which are under the influence of Tibetan Buddhism. And I have not come across anything worthwhile in Buddhism. I mean, study is different. But so far as the social side is concerned, I don't find much difference in it. He said, what have you done? MA in history or philosophy? I said, no, sir, I'm a very poorly educated man. I'm barely matriculate. Oh. After about 10 minutes time, he again put me a question. Have you done MA philosophy or religion or enterprise? No, sir, I'm a very poorly educated person. Where did you get your education then? I said, self-education. Well, he said about Buddhism, it won't happen now. That's all. So I didn't put more questions about Buddhism. But I studied. I saw his books, I saw his magazine, and went through that article which was published in the Mahabodhi Society very seriously. And since I had been very seriously studying religions like Hinduism, Rarest, Christianity, Islam, and Qadianis, and Sikhism also. So Marxism and Buddhism appealed to me more than any other. About Sikhism, I had a very poor opinion, because I became interested in Sikhism because I was teaching 2 children belonging to Sikh religion, and the father was a doctor, and he very often asked me to come to the Gurudwara, so I went to the Gurudwara. And then there was one religious festival on which they had a langar within the Gurudwara premises, and one man asked this doctor, "Aap to chule chamaron ko hamare saath bitha ke khila rahe hain?" And that was a shocking experience for me in the Gurudwara. I said, they talk about caste, this, that. Then I studied Sikhism, and I found they had 10 gurus, all belonging to the Khatri caste, none married outside his own parental caste, and the 4th guru included the teaching of saints like Ravidas, Kabir, and others in the Guru Granth Sahib. But in practice, Sikhs are no better than the Hindus, because if there is a convert from the carpenter caste, he is a Ramgarhia. If it's a convert from sweeper caste, he is a Mazhabi Sikh. If there is a convert from alcoholic merchant, I mean selling, those who sell drinks, wines and liquor, they become Aluwalis. So where is the caste system gone? You have thrown it outside from the front door and it's come back through the windows. And you have never started a movement to condemn casteism. So when I heard that man saying, "Aap to chura chamaron ko hamare saath bitha ke khila rahe hain," Punjabi, he said in Punjabi, "To sita ji chura chamaron ko sade naal bitha ke khila rahe ho." Shocking. Thereafter I never went to Gurudwara. So anyway, I mean, just relating that early experience. But after studying these religions very seriously, and also Marxism, which was critical of Buddhism, but I still felt that what Ambedkar was saying, it could make sense. Because if the untouchables continue to follow the religion that they are following, there is absolutely no hope of their ever uniting. Because if Hindus have been practicing untouchability against these castes, but these castes themselves practice untouchability among themselves. Now, for instance, if you go to a Chamar house, he looks down upon a sweeper. And when you go to the sweeper house, especially in northern India, the people who call themselves Balmiki will not have anything to do with the Hela, Dhanuk, Domar. They're also sweepers. Because Balmiki movement started in 1930s, 31. And mainly it was started by the Arasmaris, because they were converting to Christianity. And there was one man by name Ditta, born in Sialkot. He was a petty merchant who used to take things for sale on camelback. And he approached a missionary and he said, "I want to be baptized." But the Christian missionaries didn't want to baptize men belonging to the sweeper community, because they were afraid that in case the sweepers were converted and they start coming to church, everybody else will leave. And that was true. You know, because I don't know whether you're conversant with the custom in the church. In the church, after the prayer, you share sacred water. And when they share it with the same cup, naturally people feel very uncomfortable. How could they do it? They just simply touch their lips and pass on to the next person. But then they stopped coming to the church. And well, it happened in Delhi also. So, well, Holy Communion in Delhi created a problem. In Kashmirite church, you know that perhaps. Because the upper caste people became converted to Christianity after 1857. They were Muslims, they were Hindus, they became Christians. And later on, when the Christian missionaries started converting the untouchables, then they also started coming to the church. And this Holy Communion created a problem. So the upper caste converts to Christianity decided to hold a meeting in the church, prayer meeting in the church in the morning, and asked them to hold their meeting in the afternoon. So the Kashmiri Gate church had two services, one in the morning, one in the evening. One for upper caste people, one for lower caste people. Well, anyway, this is what happened there in this thing. So that thing became, I became interested in these things, and Sikhism I discarded. Buddhism appealed to me, but Buddhism was not practiced in the sense that it should have been, and I became interested in that. I studied Buddhism, I studied Ambedkar's literature, I had discussion with him on several occasions, I had discussion with other people also, and I found that the people were interested in embracing Buddhism, but it was just a conversion, conversion by name only, not inside, because I've seen that in India, when people embrace other religion, they stick to the caste. And here, even among the untouchable, you just can't get rid of the caste. Because the Christians in South India, you might have seen, if a pariah became a Christian, then the upper caste people don't go to the church. And the other castes belonging to the scheduled caste, they also don't have anything to do with these communities. So they have separate churches and separate services. So they embrace Christianity, but caste remained intact. So I was afraid of that, and in Buddhist movement, of course, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, he started it, he converted a lot of people in Maharashtra. They were mostly from the Mahar community, and only about a dozen people belonging to other communities. I was interested, and I became one of the pioneers in this field, but unfortunately, I was disillusioned because even in Maharashtra, the Mahars were the only people who came forward, and the Mang were looked down upon the Mahars, and they didn't bother about the Chamars. Only one man in the Chamar community, he became a Buddhist, P.M. Rajbhoj. Otherwise, not many people responded. And even Mahars could not get rid of their 12 and a half castes. Yes. So I was disillusioned. Then I said, well, the practical way to adopt Buddhism and to follow Buddhism is to do what Ambedkar wanted us to do practically, break the caste, one, and lay more emphasis on moral teaching of Lord Buddha, because Buddha's religion is nothing but moral teaching. This is one thing. Second is, it's more scientific, it's not dogmatic, and there's very little room for blind faith in that. So this is what appealed to me, and I started working among the people.
But did you pursue higher education after meeting?
Oh, well, that was an accident. I applied for a job in one ministry which wanted people with experience in translation. I had written about 10 or 15 books by that time and translated some books in Urdu. Lyndon Johnson's book I translated in Urdu. And there was one more book by an American writer I translated in Urdu. And An Elation of Caste I translated in Urdu. So I applied for it, but they wanted a person with honors in Urdu. And there were about 3 months. I thought it would take about 3 months' time. In the meantime, with late fee, I submitted an application to Punjab University and I passed Adib Fazil examination. But they didn't call me for interview because I was not a graduate. So after the FASL, I said, well, I'll sit for English examination. So I did English, political science and economics, political science and sociology. So that was my graduation. After that graduation, I thought, well, I'll sit for the MA. So I did MA in political science as a private candidate.
From?
Delhi, Punjab University.
Punjab University.
And I joined the evening classes for LLB from Delhi University.
Okay.
So this is how I got it.
So by when did you finish your PhD?
PhD, I worked for it. But I didn't write my thesis and submit to university. Okay. It's very wrong. People write my name as doctor. I'm not.
Yeah, that's
I've not done any doctorate, but I've written 2 theses which were accepted by some university, but not for the PhD degree.
Okay.
I'm not a PhD.
Okay. So when did you finish your law?
I finished my law in 70.
1970. So you've been a student for a long period.
I joined the evening classes and it took 3 years. I joined in 67, 68 and passed in 78. And then I'd been practicing in district court with somebody. And ultimately I joined Mr. P.P. Rao, a senior advocate in Supreme Court, who was my teacher in university.
Okay.
I became a junior in Supreme Court and had been working in High Court and Supreme Court since 1978. The thing which impressed me very much when I met him for the first time, one, his love for learning, second, his character. It was immaculately clean. His worst enemies could not criticize him. And his commitment to the cause of the untouchables. But then when I was working in labor, I found that his interest in developing this country, industrially and otherwise, was equally good. Because under him there were 2 officers, Brigadier Ree and Brigadier C.P. Clark. And he started a special training, technical training for Indian students. And under the Bevan scheme, he sent a number of people to UK for undergoing training. And he sent about 6 people belonging to the scheduled caste also for undergoing special training in UK, and they came back and held very important positions. So beside the scheduled caste, and beside other things, he was also interested in industrializing this country and creating rank and cadre to take up after the British leave.
But did he believe the same kind of vision, that Gandhian vision of Khadi? And
no,
what did he think
terribly.
about this?
Gandhi, it didn't appeal to him.
Like the village economy? And
No,
village
nothing of that
he
kind.
He wanted industrialization.
He wanted industrialization. He wanted a kind of socialism, different from communism. He wanted a kind of socialism, but he certainly was against Gandhian philosophy and Gandhi's method of working, because Gandhi was marching backward with face to the front.
But like many people say, like you said, that he was not exactly what the communists think, but was his vision also supporting private participation?
Which parts?
Private participation in our economy.
Well, so far as I know, if you come across people who have read his book on Indian economics, one was his thesis which is submitted and the other was Problem of Rupee. There is inclination towards more progressive thinking and rebuilding the nation on modern lines, very close to Marxism. Not proletariat dictatorship, but it's very close to Marxism. Because it was influenced by the labor socialist leaders of UK and some other countries, especially France and Germany.
Because many people are now projecting Ambedkar as an anti-Marxist philosopher.
Oh no, that's wrong. He was not anti-Marxist philosopher, but he was against the dogmatic people. because the books, because persons like Dange, for instance, and persons who wrote about communism, they were mostly from upper stratum of society, and they were Brahmins by caste. So that kind of Marxism didn't appeal to him. But he studied Marxism very seriously, and he studied the labor movement of Britain also. And he was much interested in modernizing India. And that is why when he was labor minister, he tried to introduce these things. And even when he wrote the Indian communism, if you go through his speeches which he delivered in the parliament, the inclination is towards progressive thinking. And that is one thing in common between Nehru and Ambedkar. And that's not been highlighted by the writers because they have not done independent research.
Because a large number of them highlight and feel that Ambedkar looked down upon Nehru.
No. They had much respect for each other. And Ambedkar was shocked because he was not a great admirer of Nehru before joining the government. But when he was invited and he had opportunity to talk to him, his opinion was very different.
Now, Ambedkar, he analyzed, studied the racial prejudices, the Varnashram Dharma. But do you agree that he could not, materialize the anger of the Dalits into a vast movement?
You see, the trouble with the Dalits is that they are incapable of thinking and taking a decision. If he had large following in Maharashtra, it was mainly from the Mahar community, not because of his ideology, but because of his caste association. And other untouchable communities kept away. But when he became an all India leader after Pune Pact, after roundtable conferences, then many people who thought they were closer to that community, they came and followed him. But majority kept away. But when he got into power, he tried to do whatever could be done as a minister. And he studied a lot and he worked a lot for that. But the community did not support him.
And do you think that anger is still missing, the anger against the Varnashrama? And today, what do you think of the state of Dalit movement in India? After so many RPIs, so many BSPs?
See, the trouble with the Dalit movement is, when Dr. Ambedkar entered the field, he started Independent Labour Party. And in Independent Labour Party, he not only had the untouchables, but he also had the upper caste people who joined as leaders in that movement. But in 40s, he thought it was not enough, so he started Scheduled Caste Federation. And that Scheduled Caste Federation was a party exclusively of the untouchables of India. Then after the transfer of power in 1947, and when he was assigned the job of drafting the constitution and pursuing it as a law minister, after that he thought that in future India we don't need a caste organization. So Scheduled Caste Federation became meaningless. He started the Republican Party of India, which was not a party exclusively of the scheduled caste people. He had many people belonging to the other caste, and he wanted to broaden the base and take up the economic cause and the social cause for advancement of India. But unfortunately, the people who took over the leadership of Republican Party, they couldn't understand him or they didn't try to follow him. So they converted RPI into another scheduled caste organization. And then it got split on caste lines and state lines. Today we have three branches of the Communist Party, I mean three divisions of the Communist RPI. It leads you nowhere.
And where are the BAMSIFs and BSPs?
Oh, BAMSIF is not a political party. BAMSIF is a confusion. Because when they started this BAMSIF, they said Backward and Minority Community Employees Federation. If it is an employee federation, it's not a political organization. One thing is clear. Second is, BAMSIF was actually started by some people in Pune. And Kanshiram was one person who didn't understand much politics in those days because he was working as a junior scientist in some defense organization. He joined that organization only there, and since he was a bachelor, they took advantage of that and they deputed him to come to northern India and try to establish BAMSIF. So this BEMSF was actually backward and minority community employees federation, but there were no minority communities. And most of the employees who joined the BEMSF belonged to the scheduled castes.
Were they from a particular scheduled community or?
No, I'll tell you. They were members of the scheduled caste. And unfortunately, Kanshiram doesn't have much understanding of sociology and politics of India. And he had been taking advantage of the vacuum created because of the failure of SCF and RPI. So the people who had been following Baba Saheb Ambedkar's organization, they thought here was a new leader, and BEMSF, because they used the name of Ambedkar, they followed him, they joined him. But then BEMSF, what is the message of BEMSF? BEMSF is we are trying to raise the consciousness of the people. It's not a party which can contest election. It is not a party which has a political program. This is not a party which has an economic program. It doesn't even have a written constitution. It didn't have it for a long time. And BEMSF said, when we come in power, we shall hold it. We'll give you the written constitution. Afterward, the constitution was written, and Mayawati also joined them. But even today, strictly speaking, it is not a political party. It is still utter confusion. And then BEMSF got split into three branches. And each is speaking its own language. And frankly, I feel that it's dominated by the Chamar community in certain areas. And in some areas, in Vidarbha, not in Bombay, in Vidarbha area, it is dominated by the Mahas. But it doesn't have an all India appeal because it doesn't have an all India understanding, all India program. Because to organize scheduled castes is not an easy job because they are divided into more than 800 castes. And there are castes and subcastes, and the caste rivalry is there. You can't even unite the Chamars, who are divided into more than 60 castes. You can't unite sweepers. They are divided into about 12 castes. And the so-called Balmikis are trying to dominate and Hinduize the whole thing. But they can't carry Dhanuks and Helas and Domars and people in Benares region who live and work as scavengers. You can't do that.
So what we call a Dalit movement or Ambedkarite movement actually just is a movement of certain caste?
Well, no.
What is the marginalized community?
See, it was started by Ambedkar and some progressive thinking honest people came forward. But then they had to go to the caste to find the following, and caste dominated in their own particular manner. So the result is it could not become an organization and movement of all scheduled castes. It became the movement of only a few enlightened castes. But even those enlightened castes could not join together. When I started Ambedkar Mission Society, I made it a principle that anybody joining this organization will have to give an undertaking that at least one member in the family will be married outside his parental caste. And that's the only proof to show that you don't believe in caste. Well, it worked for some time, and people did. Now, in my case, I've got relations within about 6 or 7 different caste groups. Malas in Andhra Pradesh, and Chamars of UP, and Dhanuks of Lucknow, and so on that way. But not many people could do it. Because unless you break the caste, and what is the right manner to break the caste? It is have closer social association. Second, marital relation. Because if you have a marital relation, naturally the caste breaks. But they don't want to have the marital relation. If you ask the Punjabi Chamar to marry outside his caste, he will say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But I don't believe in caste. I'm sorry, I can't do that. But I don't believe in caste. He will say, I don't believe in caste.
But some people feel that to break caste, you have the best option is to convert. Is conversion the best way to break caste? Or the other person I spoke just a few months back, and he was saying that conversion is very dangerous for Dalits because it takes away the revolutionary spirit from them. What?
No, see, it's a lack of understanding on their part. Look at this way. If you continue to remain divided on caste lines, you can never become a strong body, a force. You can never become. Even upper caste Hindus have not been able to become. It's the three castes which are dominating. And rest of these untouchable communities, I mean, rest of the communities belonging to the Shudra and Ati Shudra and other castes, they are not united. But in India, we have Brahmin, then Kshatriya, of course, is no longer alive. It's Rajput who took over because Kshatriyas joined in the name of Buddhism and Jainism. They had rebelled against Brahmins, so new Kshatriyas were created in the Rajputs. So Brahmin, that Kshatriya Rajputs, and then the community which became powerful after Buddhism, even during Buddhism, because they had the opportunity to study. And then they studied this Arabic and Persian during Muslim rule, and during the British English, Kashta community. Oh, yeah. That becomes the third most powerful community. So today, you have the most literate people among the Kashtas, holding power. They're not in business so much, but holding power and monopolizing education too. Whether you're in Bengal, where you have the three communities, Brahmin, Vaidya and Caste, or you come to other regions, Bihar and UP, you find caste, and you go to Andhra, you find caste. So this is one community which has come up with the help of education, and also because they took advantage of the opportunities offered by the bureaucracy and the political powers. So today we have Brahmin, then we have Rajputs, then we have trading community, which is very dominating, and then we have the castes. Outside these, all other Shudra castes are divided. And the Ati Shudras are very hopelessly divided in spite of reservation, because reservation gave opportunities. And it's only those communities who were more enlightened and they were urban, they took advantage of those reservations, not others. Now, for instance, if you go to western Uttar Pradesh, you find the Jatavs who were in business, who had the largest number of educated people. They monopolized most of the jobs. But what about the others? So, in case they continue to be members of these castes, and they don't try to change and broaden the base, there is no hope, one. Second is, here you are strengthening Hinduism. The religion which exploited you, which weakened you, which oppressed you, you're strengthening Hinduism because you're imitating the upper caste people in all respects. Marriage ceremonies, festivals, cremation ceremonies, and other things. You're strengthening it. And if you go on strengthening it, you're not strengthening yourself. One. Second is, in case they embrace other religion, what will happen? Let's go to the history. They embraced Christianity, maintained caste. They embraced Islam, maintained caste. Because in Islamic society is divided into three major religions: Ashraf, Ajlaf, Arzal. Ashraf are Sheikh Syed Mughal Pathan who came as invaders. And they looked down upon the people who were converted here. They are included in the second category, Ajlaf. And at the bottom are the working class people and lower caste people and the untouchable people who are included in the Arzal. Okay. Of course, today they adopt the name. Now, for instance, there's a butcher, Khatik, convert to Islam. Now, what does he do? He says, I'm Qureshi, because Qureshis came from outside. And if there is a weaver, Julaha, and Julaha is an untouchable caste, he's become a Muslim. What does he say now? Yeah, I'm Ansari, came from Ansar. I mean, they're trying to hide it. But the fact remains that the Muslim society is divided into three major communities: Ashraf, Ajlaf, Arzal, and there are no intermarriages. Yeah. So, religion, Christianity, Islam, and Sikhism have failed because they were sticking to the original teachings of religion, which acknowledges the presence of a God. And the book says God created all men and all men are equal. In fact, they are not equal. So Baba Saheb thought that in case this thing continues, and if they continue to remain divided on caste line, what is the future? So he thought there must be a religion, but what kind of a religion? Now, when he said what kind of religion, the question arises, how is the institution of religion existing today? Religion is a nominal title for most of the people. They don't care for the original teaching of the religion. They stick to it mainly for political reasons, also because it gives you an identity and a history. But majority of the people professing different religions have little knowledge about their own religion. They don't follow it. They only use it for marriage and burial. Nothing more than that. So Dr. Ambedkar, he thought that we need bringing about a change, a revolutionary change. And that revolutionary change is that religion has to be replaced, and that religion is to be based on reason, compassion, and brotherhood. That's why he started Buddhism. And Buddhism, because in the teaching of Buddhism, as Lord Buddha said at the end of his life, there is no place for God. And he said you have to change, but you have to keep in mind the general happiness of people, which can elevate them and also unite them. So that's why he chose Buddhism. But unfortunately, the leaders of Buddhism have not been able to carry that message to the people. They want to maintain the caste and at the same time call them Buddha.
One question which you always say that most of these movements only cater the need of the working classes, particularly the employees, the government employees, whether it is the Ambedkarite movement or so-called SC/ST, bomb safe movements. They never reach the agrarian laborers, and people say, we don't have the exact figure, but 90% Dalits are the landless communities. And when we talk about all these reservation and all these things, most of these movements are basically among the scheduled caste people who are working. And that is one reason why they feel that the movement has not reached to the most marginalized communities.
Well, you see, the trouble is that he started the movement quite all right. And in Chocolate program, how to reach 700,000 villages of India where 70% people live. And people in the villages are worse treated by the dominating communities, no matter which it is. If it is Maratha and Kunbis in Maharashtra, it is Jat in Uttar Pradesh and Punjab, and Rajputs and agriculture communities in India. He thought that. Bengal is different, because in Bengal, the Sikh community didn't work in the land. The land went to the untouchable because of reforms. Initially started with some progressive people, later on by the Marxists. So the land belongs to the untouchable today. But in most of India, in 700,000 villages of India, 70% people live. This movement which Dr. Ambedkar wanted the movement to go to the villages, unfortunately the leadership came from the urban areas. Educated, semi-educated people took over the leadership of the party, and the movement didn't go beyond that. But there were some people who really tried to educate the villages. But then working in the villages is very difficult. Very difficult because the society there is horizontally and vertically divided, and the landholding community is the worst enemy. So what Ambedkar did was, he gave a call to the people to migrate to the cities. So people who could not face the situation in the rural areas, they migrated to the cities in some areas. But then situation differs in different states. In Punjab it is different from Uttar Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh is different from Bihar, and so on. And in southern states it is very different. But in southern states the situation is slightly better. Slightly better in the sense because the land was owned by the Brahmins, and the Brahmins have been, thrown out in South India. But not in North India. In North India, the land is not owned by the Brahmin. Land is owned by other people. And they are middle class people. And these people could not organize themselves because they became Hinduized. And when you become Hinduized, naturally you try to look towards them for guidance and protection. So the village movement of landless people has not been initiated by RPI. They have it in the program. They have it in the program. But it's not been promoted because most of the leadership came from the cities and they were more interested in winning reserve seats. And they exploited the poor people living in the villages for the purpose of election only, but didn't take up their cause.
Yeah, one of the most marginalized communities has been the scavenger community among the Dalits.
Well,
and do you think that there is an invisible resistance to empower this community in vis-a-vis Ambedkarite movement?
No, you see, the scavengers community, of course, it is not a community in the real sense because it's divided into about 12 to 14 castes in different parts of India. But in South India, the division is not that bad. In South India, now for instance, you go to Andhra, you find the Malas and Madigas, two major communities in Andhra. Of course, they have a number of Malas. But Madigas, 70% of the Madigas work as sweepers. And Madigas are basically chamars. So in South, the division is not that strict and hard as it is in Northern India. In Northern India, we have about 12 or 14 castes. And most of them are employed under the municipal corporations, municipal committees, cantonment boards, station staff offices, railways, and this kind of organization. And they have a long tradition of being exploited by the people promoted as jamadars in these departments. And in spite of the fact that it's a very lowly occupation, people pay bribe to get jobs. So even in Delhi, you have to pay a bribe in order to get employed under the municipal corporation or municipal committee. Unfortunately, this community efforts have not been made to unite the sweepers. Why? Because you took up the cause in one particular area, and the community which is living in a separate quarter, separate area, is one community, and then you try to pick up leaders from among them. Mostly the Jamadar will become a leader, or a person having an ambition to enter politics, join the political party, and he becomes a leader. Semi-educated persons and so on. So majority of them are employed under the municipal corporations, municipal bodies, and second majority is employed as private laborers working in the mohallas on Brit system. So in Brit system, you have hundreds of masters. If you're working in a mohalla, you have 40 families or 50 families. So naturally you live under the domination of them because they give you some money, they give you some thrown out garments, and in marriages and other days you get some leftover food, and you go for begging for food every day also. So it's not one master, several masters. And efforts have not been made to unite them. And if they unite, because of the economic weaknesses, they don't remain united for long. So that is why the sweeper and scavenger community, even today, continues to be one of the poorest and most backward communities in India. One reason is leadership. The second is economic status, and you have to find a job. And the third is you live in a mohalla where you have all the vices. And this job doesn't need hard work. It's only dirty work. You don't have to exert very much, no physical or muscular activity. But it's a dirty work and looked down upon by everybody. So these factors have created many problems which are secondary problems. Now, for instance, they are addicted to drinking, wasteful expenditure in marriages, imitation of the masters, and wasteful marriages and wasteful expenditure on imitation. You see, until 1930, 40, dead used to be buried. Now they become Hinduized. So they have to be cremated. And if a person is to be cremated, naturally you need a lot of money. And if you don't have money, you borrow. So this Hinduization has also weakened them. So the reason is that efforts have not been made by different people, for the leaders, to unite these people, to unite different castes, and to make them acquainted with the programs of the government. Even the commissions have not been able to do that, and their causes have not been taken up properly. And educationally they are backward because the dropout rate is very high, and efforts have not been made to promote education in these classes. In one or two places, schools were started exclusively for the sweepers, but ultimately what happened was the sweeper number went down and upper caste people went up in those schools. Allahabad and Jalandhar and this place, Delhi. So there are many factors.
Do you think there is a resistance among the other Dalit communities vis-a-vis these communities?
Well, there has been.
Are there prejudices?
There has been, but then even among the Chamars and Mahars, there have been prejudices against some of their own people. I think that is part of Hinduism. But then among the sweepers also, the Balmikis looked down upon everybody else. The so-called Balmikis, who became Balmiki, was adopted in 1931, they looked down upon the Dhanuks and Domars and Helas and so on. So how can you blame it? It's part of Hinduism.
How do you, feel when you see the various Dalit movement or empowerment in UP, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh? How do you think? What do you think about them? They are empowering the community, or they are identity-based movements?
No, you see, I've been associated with this movement from age 16, and I've also been associated with the labor movement. I personally feel, and I've come across many people who are still thinking very correctly, and they want to organize them on the proper lines. But unfortunately, the ambitious political people want to take advantage of the backwardness and ignorance of these people. They are creating problems. And the result is that the right kind of leadership is making efforts to come up, to educate them and to lead them. But these pseudo politicians, illiterate people with more ambition and less knowledge, they are coming in the way. And I think there is hardly a political organization which is free from this accusation. Congress, BJP, and many others. They have not been able to bring up the right kind of people, and they want to encourage this tendency. But I think the way the people belonging to the scheduled caste, and even this, including the sweepers, they are thinking, and the kind of articles which are being written nowadays in their journals, and in the smaller meetings and conferences, what they are saying, I think there is some hope, but it will take some time. Some hope in the sense that the population of the right-thinking people is showing an upward trend. Now, for instance, could you ever imagine that the sweepers of Punjab will hold a conference to have a mass conversion to Buddhism? They had it last year in Ludhiana.
How many people converted?
There were about 5,000 people present, but converted, I think, about 2,000 people.
Sweepers.
Yeah. So, new trends are coming up. They're not getting much publicity in the media, but the new trends are coming up. A new kind of leadership is also coming up. And in several meetings that I've attended, I've found that they were talking sense. But unfortunately, they're helpless because they don't have the means.
Do you feel that still people misquote Ambedkar sometime? I don't say misquote, but they say that political power is a master key, and this term is being manipulated in such a way that all the Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed, and they say that once you have the political power, it can change everything from social and cultural.
Well, there was a time when he said that. But you know, when you're speaking as a political leader, and you're addressing different kind of audiences, you say so many things. But his real program, if you want to understand his philosophy, then there is a book, Emancipation of Untouchables, and Mr. Gandhi.
Gandhi, Rana Day and
Rana Day, Gandhi and Jinnah. I think that's one of the best books which gives this whole idea. And political power is all right, you have to win political power. But then, you also have to get rid of the weaknesses within the society. He also said promotion of education. What is being done for promotion of education? So it's very wrong to say that he laid emphasis only on the political power. There are so many people holding political power, they're not being able to do anything. Because political power, without ideology and right kind of workers, means nothing. And I think it is misquoting Ambedkar, or they have not been able to understand in what circumstances he said political power is important. Because when he was speaking as a political leader and addressing a meeting of the SCF, we might have said that.
Yeah.
But then what is important is, what about the other work? In a country like India, where casteism is very strong, and every election gives it further lease of life.
Yeah.
So it's not enough.
How important is the role of state in Dalit empowerment? Like now, after the globalization, we are the state sector is continuously being, disempowered. There is no jobs in the government. So, what do you think about it?
Well, this problem is rather complex. Had reservation been properly implemented, then you could have about 10% or 15% people where it's not been properly implemented. You have more people in the categories 3 and 4, not in 1 and 2. And now, with the judgments of the Supreme Court, they are going to suffer more. They're going to suffer more in the years to come. And this globalization and other things, they don't attract that much attention by the oppressed and weaker section of the society at the moment. But then in the globalization, if the international movement of the Dalits is properly handled, even in the globalization they can have a share, if it is properly conducted. Because globalization, it has a political motive, it has an economic motive, and it leads to empowerment. But what is behind those people who are trying to promote this idea? Are they trying to solve their own problems, find the markets, create new markets, create new classes, and then get hold of the power also? But I think in Western countries I found that there were more people today who are becoming conversant with the problems of this weaker section of society, and they want to take advantage of it. And it's not unlikely that within some years' time, they may even try to create a new kind of consciousness and leadership among these people.
What would have been Baba Saheb's thought on this issue of international cooperation and globalization?
Well, it's very difficult to say, because he was one man, who was very rational in thinking, but he always had the interest of the weakest section of society and his country. I don't know what you would have said in regard to globalization, because
his decision to join the Viceroy Council.
Well, Viceroy's Council he joined because he wanted to be in power and be able to do something for the weaker section of society, and at the same time promote industrialization and promote modern thinking. So he joined that Viceroy's Council, and really the kind of work that he did during those years, from 40 to 46, I think it is remarkable, because he was laying down the foundation of the industrialization of India.
But many people quote it like this: he joined Viceroy's Council just to say that dushman ka dushman dost.
Oh no, not that. He never considered the British to be the friends. But he got an opportunity because British wanted to expand the Executive Council, and they included so many other progressive Hindus also. He was one person representing the scheduled caste, but then I think he was the most capable and learned person among this whole lot which was taken in. But he had economic program which he tried to implement through this Ministry of Labour, which was considered an orphan ministry. And through that Ministry of Labour, he tried to promote the industrialization of India and also tried to create a class of technically trained people. Nobody had done it earlier.